This is the Other 22 Hours podcast. Hi, and welcome to today's episode of the Other 22 Hours podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Shafer-Haiss.
And I'm your host, Michaela Anne. If you're a returning listener, thank you for coming back. If you are brand new, welcome.
Those of you that are new to the show, we do things a little bit differently around here. We are going to focus on the other 22 hours, the hours that we spend off stage that are usually outside of the public eye. And we're going to talk to our guests about tools and routines that they've found to stay inspired and stay sane and stay grounded while building a career around their art.
Between the two of us, Aaron and I have almost 25 years of experience in the music business. I started out working at labels, teaching music at public schools in New York City, and have spent the better part of the last decade recording and releasing my own music and touring the world.
And I started playing in bands in high school and making records in basements and garages. And then after many, many years of music school, I also taught classes in New York City public schools, but spent a lot of years on the road with different bands. And now I spend most of my time right here in my studio in Nashville, producing records and writing music for TV. So through all of this, Michaela and I have learned that there's no one right way to build a career around your passion.
And in an industry where so much feels out of our control, left up to luck, who you know, being in the right place at the right time, we wanted to focus on the things that are within our control.
And with that in mind, we decided to invite some of our friends and some of our favorite artists on the show to talk about what they do to create sustainability in their lives so that they can sustain their creativity. And that friend today is Elizabeth Cook.
Elizabeth feels like she's an icon in our world. She really straddles this line between mainstream country and the independent spirit of the East Nashville art community. She's put out several records and been a guest on the Grand Ole Opry over 400 times.
Yeah, she was a guest multiple times on Letterman, one of his favorite guests I've heard. And she also has quite the diverse career. On top of making records and touring, she also hosts a popular show on Sirius XM satellite radio called Apron Strings on the Outlaw channel. She's got a TV show called Upstream on Circle TV, and she's got her own clothing line called Women for Sheriff.
She's also making a movie, as we learned today.
So naturally, we talked a lot about having a diversity in your career and how that can really help with longevity and how it doesn't detract from one area, it inspires the whole.
Our conversation with Elizabeth was especially inspiring to me on the topics of making life art, how everything has an opportunity for creativity, and trying to consciously live outside of fear-driven choices and motives.
And then also constantly refining what is right for you and what feels right, even with a big carrot dangling in front of you. When you kind of whittle it down, you find the right people to surround yourself with, the right opportunities to surround yourself with. It really attracts more, and it should feel easy, which is something I'm still learning. If it's not hard, it doesn't feel right. And Elizabeth makes a good point on why I'm wrong with that. Without further ado, here's our conversation with Elizabeth Cook.
Well, it's good to see y'all.
It's good to see you too.
How have you been? I don't even remember the last time I saw you in person. It feels like years.
I feel like we were all at D's and we were all wearing leopard. Do you remember that?
Leopard.
Me, you, and Carlene Carter were all in leopard, and we took a photo together. This is the shit that happens at D's.
Yeah. I was like, this is years ago because I haven't.
And maybe
personally.
Lauren Morrow too. I don't know. Anyway,
right.
Also, what's not bright is my memory. So
we have a almost 2-year-old, which means I have not been at D's for a long time, and also my memory doesn't work anymore because we don't sleep.
Oh my gosh. I think about y'all. I do. And I know it's delightful and everything is about it. But I'm sorry that I know you're probably not resting very well. And I hope you have support and help and, because it's hard.
Yeah, I'd like to say it's like the most grueling tour you've ever been on. That just doesn't stop.
And that's how I knew it wasn't for me. Because I crack under the other already as is. Yeah.
I will never forget when we posted on Instagram that she was born. I think there was like something happened on the highway here where a woman was giving birth on the side of the highway. And it was all in the news. And I remember you commented and you were like, I saw a woman giving birth on the highway and I wondered if it was you guys. And And you were like so glad to hear you made it to the hospital.
Yeah, so maybe the last time I saw you wasn't at Dee's and was, at Garden Fresh or wherever, and you were, looking super ready or something, maybe.
Yeah, who knows? Thank you so much for being willing to be our guest and chat with us.
One of the reasons why I wanted to have you as a guest on this show is because you seem just so strongly and centered in who you are and what you do and the ownership of that. And I find it really inspiring. You have this foot in the legacy of country music, but then you completely do your own thing. Every record you put out is something new and something different and something that's your own thing, that you've carved out your own little corner and everything. And I find that really respectable.
Thank you. I mean, most importantly, probably the only credit that I could take in that is that I've kept putting myself out there no matter what. But I've had some good help along the way, and that's been important. That part also has to happen, and it's like I've had a lot of bad help too, in terms of like my partners in the industry, managers and record label and all the cliche shit you hear, about it all the time. But I've had some really great folks along the way too that have supported me and helped me be able to have those steps. That is the biggest journey. One of the biggest journeys in it all has been mining out and finding those people, and to not become jaded and pissed off in that process because you get let down a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of rejection. There's a lot of disappointment. Have you always had a nose for sniffing out the people that'll help, or did you scratch your knees a lot figuring that out?
Well, that's why I said the only credit I could take is just keeping myself out there, and because it's not been a talent of mine. It's been more failures than successes in that department, and that's been frustrating and hard. I think I'm probably on my 5th or 6th booking agent. Every once in a while you hear somebody say, "Oh, this is my manager, and he's been managing me since, we played high school football together," or whatever. And I'm like, God, I just envy and admire that so much. But I've had people allow me to be and trust me to be and help support me in the industry. And I found them along the way through a laborious process.
I think about this a lot, of the people that you find to work with you. And I think there can be this trap of when you see people that are like, oh, they found their advocate or their champion or their partner so early on, and that stability probably really helped their career. And if you aren't someone who had that, I personally find it hard to not internalize it and be like, well, what's wrong with me that I'm not attracting the right partner?
And in part, that may be. You may have something you need to work on and comb out. I did.
What was your process in that? Did you have that question? And
at first, I was disillusioned when I got a major label record deal, which was the holy grail of what you could get. And when I got that, after 4 years at a publishing company on Music Row, and that's what we were going for. And when I got that deal, and then there was quickly the Time Warner AOL merger, and I got folded from Atlantic Records into Warner Brothers Records, and they trimmed the roster way down, and the people that signed me were fired, and all this shit was going on. And I really wanted to go tour. I was young. I felt like I needed to get in a van with a band and go duke it out and develop myself more, because I just didn't feel ready. And they wanted my first gig to be an awards show. So they would spend literally $175,000 on a video. Isn't that just mind-blowing what that economy was then? Yes. Yeah. Yes. Like nothing. And they were burying the money at that time in Nashville. It was the stadium arena era gold rush of Garth and Shania and mega superstars in country music that were dominating across genres. So anyway, I was very disillusioned by that, because I knew that was something I needed to work on. What I didn't know that I needed to work on was a little bit of bad attitude with executives and an automatic combative, and I don't know if it was defensiveness out of my own insecurities for whatever reason, but I loved when Warner Brothers didn't work out, and I went and asked to be released from my contract. And they let me go. And I can remember going to some big audition they were having somewhere where it was like packed room, and they were hosting auditions to be on like who's going to be the Nashville star, American Idol type deal. And those things were still relatively new, but they were hot. And if you won it, you got a record deal. And I was literally standing in that room looking at those seas of desperate ass people trying to make this happen, knowing I was about to go ask to be released from mine, and how alone I felt and how disillusioned I was with all of it. But I did that, and then I got a meeting with Sony, and then they just didn't call back after that meeting. And when the word came down as to why, the meeting was too much about what I would not do. So I just went in swinging. And this may segue to the other part of what I think y'all want to talk about, is creating all the time. For me, I can't just create in music. I have to create everywhere. And you create your environment and populate it with people as if you're making a painting. It has to be inspired. It has to feel good to both people. And if you have those similar sensibilities and you're on that same plane together, then you can work together and you can create something together. So to always be creating in every part of your career, not just the music part.
But thinking of that as part of the creativity is a concept that I don't think I've thought of
Totally.
like, oh, this is also me being creative, designing who's going to be in my life, who's going to be in my work process. I've always thought about it as like tasks. That's what I have to do to then be able to create. But when you encompass it of like every aspect of your life is a part of your creativity.
Yes, that's exactly it. Tasks are traps. A task is a trap. And I have to do stuff all day long. Like, I am my dog's doorman. I'm a doorman for my dog. He has needs on an ongoing basis of which side of the door he needs to be on. And he's insistent and vocal about them. And I find myself letting the dog in and out a lot. And so when I hear him start going off and knowing, all right, he's discontent with something, what is it? You know, he's out of water, he's out of whatever, and he wants out. All right. So that's a task when it clicks with me, like I'm going to have to get up and do something. But to try and stay in the mindset of every moment's a creative moment, no matter what. And I go as far as to drive my partner crazy with how much I have to keep my environment creative, creating what the room looks like. I can't just go buy curtains. It's not that simple for me. It's going to be a thing, and I'm going to think through it. I'm on a rabbit hole, and, you know, some doctors will tell you there's medication for this. But I have to stay in that space as much as I can in order to be good at what I do. And there are limits. I mean, yeah, you know, how creative can you be when you're going to do your taxes or whatever? But if I'm making a little Excel spreadsheet to tell my accountant how much something was, I might go up in the corner and I might like, oh, I'm going to color this line yellow, and I'm going to color this line thing, and I'm going to shrink this column, and I just think you have to be secure in your environment to be able to be in that space also. I think you have to feel safe, then trying to keep everything on some level of wonder and some level of playful, no matter what it is. It's just a more pleasant way to exist for me.
Yeah, I can understand that. Saying curious comes to mind. How can this be different? What can we do with this?
Yes, another example of wonder. And it's not all music. It can't be. I'd go nuts. It would be bored to death.
It gets stale.
Yeah, so I have to find other things that I'm genuinely curious about and allow myself time and consider that time part of work.
That approach for you, that kind of ethos of the way that you live, has that just always been a part of you, or have you had to grow through developing that as a way to understand, oh, this is the best way for me to live and stay creative, especially when you're also like navigating record deals and support and how kind of disruptive that can be? Did that affect your outlook and then in part your ability to create?
Yes, very much so, because I didn't understand it. I didn't understand why I had conflict with situations so much and why everything felt so hard all the time. And I know there's like books on this and stuff about keeping a childlike spirit or keeping, you know, and I'm like, you can't walk around doing pirouettes all day. Some people do, but they'll lock you up for that. So, but I think I didn't understand that. So it was always like, there's all this shit that has to be done and it's got all this pressure on it and I don't want to do it. And then there's this other absolutely magical part of my existence that is all that they're really interested in, that is getting no nurture, and this vacuum will just suck you in. So I find myself existing in that space a lot and struggling to get back over to this one. So one key thing that played into that exact concept, but really helped serve, was finding good people and learning to trust the process. I have a manager now and a partner now that understand how I think and how I work, and just trust it. And that's been hard won. I struggled for a long time not wanting to accept the way that I needed to exist in that other space in a very real and tangible way all the time for my sanity. And I tried so hard to go the other way because I double majored in accounting and computer information systems. I got a job with Pricewaterhouse as an auditor. And it's such a controlled environment, in a corporate environment. And I could go to school and I could take the classes and nail the classes and get the GPA and all that stuff. But man, put me in that work environment and I was dead on arrival. There was no way I was going to succeed at being an accountant. Luckily, I saw that sooner than later. At least not in that structure.
So you were chasing that down before getting the pub deal and all of that?
Yeah. So I didn't want to do music at a few different times in my life. I quit when I was 12. I quit really when I decided to go to college, was a sign to my parents that I was not going to. And my mother was so kind of just perplexed by it. And they were such blue collar people. They didn't understand going to school. You know, that's not what you do. Now you can go be a country super, you can go be Reba McEntire, or you can stay here and work and hang out with us, you know, and those were kind of the options. And yeah, Mama was like, God, when I was your age, if I'd have looked like you, not had any kids yet, I would have been on a bus to Nashville so fast. And she would have. It was her great passion and dream to chase that. But yeah, I didn't want it. I was like, I had the lunchroom ladies at the high school I went to gave me a $500 scholarship. And I started community college with that nugget of encouragement, which was tiny. And I got a job at the bank, answering the phone at Waycross Bank and Trust in Waycross, Georgia, and going to the community school there, which was hard as fuck. And then my girlfriend figured out how you could get a Pell Grant and a loan and talked me into coming to Georgia Southern with her because she needed a roommate. So, boy, that took some doing with my parents, and it's only because of this girl that was my friend who's like this hoss, redneck, tough girl that they trusted I could go with her because she could skin a buck and run a trout line, basically. And so I would be safe with her. Big strapping gal and a Star, is her name. Still see her every Thanksgiving. So anyway, yeah, I got to go off to college to be with her. And then I liked math a lot, but I also liked literature.
I had no idea that you were an accountant originally.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, so I went through 4 calculuses thinking I wanted to be a math teacher. And then they teach you like an introductions to education class. I went to that class and they put you out in the field in that class for one of the weeks of it or something. And man, those kids came in there and all I could see, I guess some teachers are able to compartmentalize in an unbelievably gifted way, because all I could see was a sea of hungry, sad. It was like a C-level math 7th grade geometry class in Statesboro, Georgia. And yeah, not good. I was like, oh my God, these kids are like, they need help, you know? I can't stand up here and talk about the Pythagorean theorem or whatever. You know, I couldn't believe it. So I didn't do that. I didn't go the English route or the literature route because my second Lit 2 professor hit on me. So I ended up going to the business route, but with accounting major. And then I doubled in computer information systems because I like to get stoned in code
Okay.
when I was in college.
Have those skills proved helpful through your career as a musician artist?
Yes. Yeah. All of it. Just the whole experience of finding out who you are and having patience with that. Yeah, I'm 50 years old, kick, stretch, and
Yeah.
and all that. And all that was necessary. So the only regrets that I have is not in any choices that I made, but maybe how I might have treated some people along the way. Like, I could have been a better person there. I was acting out of my own anguish or whatever.
Being human.
Yeah.
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 So after college, you got a job as an accountant, and then you said that didn't work out, and I would assume that it wasn't as creative an outlet. Basically, it was
Yes, exactly.
too rigid.
Yeah, so there were things about it like where I couldn't seem to get the fashion down. So I always was dressed a little off, and I could feel it. But I had a little bit of personality, so they liked it when we would show up at a client's because I would talk to the other people that worked there. And so they liked that because nobody's happy when the auditors show up. And then the real turning moment was when, like, I was doing some really mundane, like, entry-level auditor accountant type deal, like, go through the checkbook and we're just going to pull these and test these checks and make sure they're for what they said they were for and the amount cleared for the right amount or whatever. I had some idea that I wanted to build a spreadsheet to make it such that the person that came to do that task on next year's audit, there would be like a thing. I wanted to create something, in other words. And he was like, no, that'll take too much time. Just do it. And I was like, it'll be super fast. I'll be super fast. And he's like, no, don't do it. Well, I went over there and I did it. And I got caught. And he was so mad at me. He was so mad at me. He would go on to ask me on a date on Bumble. But, yeah, years later, isn't it funny? Yeah. I'm not on Bumble. It was a moment.
For the record.
And I was like, oh no. I was like, these motherfuckers. So I wanted to create something, and I was not going to be allowed to ever. And the hours were grueling, and the culture was dull. Well, I had been hanging out with some musicians around town, going to some open mics, and just dipping my toe in to see what was out there. You know, I really didn't have a lot of time for it. I was about to start traveling with being an accountant for Pricewaterhouse, so it was just a curiosity. I was a young single adult living in Nashville. So I lived with my sister in an apartment in Franklin. She had 3 kids, husband, and a grandma, and we all lived in this apartment in Franklin. So I would nanny during the day for her before my Pricewaterhouse gig started. I had 3 months, and then go cat around Nashville. During that time, I met these guys that were like doing an ASCAP writers night, you know, in some shed off Nolensville Road. And I started hanging around them, and some of those guys had deals. And I would get up and sit in and sing every once in a while. One of the guys said, hey, there's this dude on Music Row. He's got all this old catalog. They want a traditional female singer to come sing it. Would you go and, you know, sing it for me? And they'll pay you something. It'll just be something fun to do. I was like, all right, sure. So on my lunch break, I go down to Bro and Sis Music at 19th and Division in like my Ann Taylor pantsuit and walk in and meet this guy named Jeff Gordon. And he was like, here's a guitar, play me something. And I played like a verse and a chorus of a song I had written in college. Not because I was trying to be a songwriter, just because I was a natural, always on creative mode at some level. And so I played him that, and he offered me a deal to write songs, right? He offered me a publishing deal. He's like, do you want a publishing deal? And I was like, I don't know. and I was dating this guy at the time, so we come back to meet with him, and I bring the guy that I'm dating because he's one of the guys that hangs around this shed off Nolensville. I'll never forget it. And this is when I knew I was done with that motherfucker, because he sat down in the chair and he leaned back like this, and he looked at the guy and he goes, so what are we going to do with her? And I was like, am I a sheep? Are we at the sale barn? So that was it for him. He was out. And then I ended up taking the deal. And it was for half of what I was making at Pricewaterhouse. But again, I didn't have I had some student loans, but that was about it. And they had an empty office in that building. Next door to them was an old building. They knocked it down now, but it was built in the 1800s. It was a home for unwed mothers. It became Warner Brothers Records buildings before the one over on 16th. And they had the little corner office up there, and it had a bathroom because the president of the Warner Brothers had his own whatever. And this empty room that was just lined with vinyl that they represented, that they owned. And I got like a fold-out chair and moved on what shit I had out of my sister's apartment into that office, and I lived there for 3 years.
Wow. So were you writing with other people? Were you doing that whole thing?
Yes.
Or were you just...
Yes. So he had another writer, this guy that would come up from Alabama named Hardy McGee, and he wanted to be a producer. So they started developing me basically to get a record deal. And that's when we started working towards it. And we made an album that's just the Blue record. It's just got my name on it. And we made a record of songs I had written, some by myself, some with Hardy McGee. And then that got me the deal with Atlantic. And then that got me the deal with Warner Chappell. And Warner Chappell had me writing with all kinds of people, from Harlan Howard to Harlan Howard, John Scott Sherrill, a guy named Jim McBride that wrote Chattahoochee.
Yeah.
Wow.
How was that experience? It sounds like it was kind of like just jumping in the deep end at that point.
It was, because there were some good ones, good co-writers, but there was also a lot of people I didn't connect with at all. And there was this thing up at the publishing company, they had a fax machine. I'm older than God. They would have this fax machine, and I think it was every Friday or Monday, I can't remember, the row fax would come out. And it was like, here it comes. And it was coming up. Every label, every publishing house, everybody was getting, here came the fax. And it would have who was cutting, what label they were cutting on, who the song plugger was, who the publisher was, who was producing, so you knew who to send. I guess the pluggers took the songs to the producer's person or the A&R at the label. And they would, send you in a room in their big gargantuan building with 2 or 3 other people and be like, Martina's looking for a power ballad. So that clearly is not how I create. And it's successful for some people. I believe it can even be inspired, but I don't co-create super well. I collaborate to flush out creations by bringing other people that are also creating what they're doing that complements what I'm doing, but I don't like to collaborate but not co-write. Like, my part of it's not really negotiable.
I assume you kind of learned that in this situation, in this pub deal, from being put in with all these writers. Did you kind of learn that your role was writing more as like the artist rather than trying to write for other artists? Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, because they signed me because I had a record deal. The songs would be in most normal protocol. Yes, the songwriters in the room will be focused on me and my next record. But I was very disenfranchised over at Warner Brothers because of the merger. So I had gotten kicked in over there. I got the worst manager possible for that label. And my camp just changed. And I really didn't have anybody. And my producer for the album, a lot of bad personal stuff started happening there that came out of nowhere at me, involving him and his family. That is because I'm a woman, basically. I don't think that's something that the male artists have to deal with as much. I know they do some, though. But I was dangling out there in the publishing company, co-writing, song factory making. But lately I've been dabbling in it again of my own accord, mainly just to be with some of the people and writers that I just want to spend time with. The songwriting part's okay. Some of it I like. I can't decide if it's just I'm not good at it or it's inherently broken or what, or I just haven't done it enough in the right frame of mind to make it work for me. I don't know yet.
I remember reading an interview with you years ago where you referenced having a publishing deal and like writing in offices during the day, and you just being like, that just doesn't work for me. I think it was probably our early days of moving to Nashville, and I found that so comforting because I never got a publishing deal, but I tried to dabble in that as well and went to some publishing houses and did some writing, and I was always like, I feel so weird and not myself, and how come this is like so hard for me? And
but other people do it every day, happily and successfully, and God bless them. But there is some part of the chain that is different.
But for some of us, and I think that's the biggest thing, is that I felt I was able to make my way a little more to being on terms with myself of it's okay, because I saw, well, Elizabeth Cook doesn't feel like it's good either.
Well, I don't know whether to say I'm sorry or thanks or what.
All to say that I think I am someone that I feel like has not had an easy path in this music business, and I'm always trying to like figure out, I don't feel like I fit in easily anywhere.
Though clearly talented. You're clearly talented, but I get what you mean. When you're going along, it's like everybody thinks you're great, but yet nothing's like clicking.
Yeah, and I think that's why these conversations are important to me to put out in the world, because you are someone that I don't know intimately well, but I've watched and thought, wow, she like really has navigated so much stuff on my very surface level knowledge of it. But it looks like you are continuing to learn like what is you, and you don't fit in a box, and you yet are so, in my observation, respected in a lot of these kind of like traditional pop country realms as well. And then also do whatever you want with working with Todd Snyder and making your own music. And I've just admired how it seems like you just keep going. You just keep doing whatever you are led to do. And I think then in turn, the people who are attracted to you and your work are that much more attracted to it because it's so individually Elizabeth.
Yeah, and so it's hard to sell that to a box brand mentality business, because when the brand is to be as authentic to yourself as you can be, no human can be put in a box. No human can be put in a box, you know? It's like everyone is way more nuanced than we think. So yeah, people having the aptitude or whatever to be able to perceive that about a person, and the patience too, and the space too, because we get in the hustle of life and working and it can just drag you down, but you can't really serve others because it also sounds incredibly self-indulgent, I feel like, which is women where you're trained to especially not be. And so it's sort of the audacity to be self-indulgent, because I know that if I'm not my best, I can't really serve anyone else well anyway.
Well, have you had to be conscious about, okay, I'm going to make another record. Should I make a record that sounds like a specific thing that would be easier to market? Have those thoughts or conversations ever been in your realm, or have you just been like, no, this is what I feel like making, and I'm going to do it?
Always a debate and a battle going on. But that is fear-driven, and that has not served me. Anytime that I try to do it, I feel genuinely bad at it. And when I was really fighting in those high-end publishing circles, my daddy kind of got on me a little bit. He's like, I recognize all the bullshit around the business that you're in. He said, but when people are paying you to do a job, you go do it. And that's a principle that we have. And it wasn't enough to just have that obligation because of a contract. It was like, I felt like I was bad at it. I didn't want to do it because I felt like I'm not helping anybody. I'm wasting everybody's time coming in there and writing a song that's never going to see the light of day and leaving like that's okay. And then I went through a very arrogant phase about it where it's like, this is so precious to create and to do, and our inspirations and our messages as artists and regurgitating what we perceive and all that stuff is such a precious thing that I can't stand to see it bastardized and flitted around like an appointment. You know, I just thought it wasn't respectful of art. Solely concentrated on the monetization and money and in power, status, all those things. Boy, that hustle's really got a lot of people eat up too. Yeah. Everybody just needs to feel like somebody. And I don't want to hate on that either.
Yep.
Yeah, I assume that kind of realization took you away from the publishing world.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, it was just, and it was one of those examples of like, I feel adverse to my environment and my situation. Why do I feel adverse to it all the time? What's got to change? And it's just like the Rubik's Cube that you keep spinning and turning and spinning and turning and spinning and turning. And I'm still spinning and turning it.
So through like all these changes and all the adversity that you've faced through your career, has having that double degree played any role in that? I like math, I can be an accountant, I can go and do this other thing. Has that been present in mind, or is that?
Yeah, for a minute, but not really in any realistic way. And especially now, it's like, I'm too old. But I was like, if I could find somewhere cool to go be like Betty the bookkeeper at a mechanic's shop or something, you know, I kind of have like this tiny little fantasy about that. But not really, because I learned that I have to work for myself. I can work with other people where they're the boss of me in certain situations and I'm the boss of them in certain situations, you know, but I can't step into a machine that's been created by a business model and be a nut or a bolt that turns in that machine. It's just not how I'm wired. And I have to make it by hook or by crook some other way.
Yeah, it seems like you've created quite the business for yourself between being a host on Outlaw Radio and having your TV show and having your clothing line now. You have quite a few pokers in the fire.
And talking about to have those degrees served. So I shouldn't dismiss it as have they served only in context of whether or not I would go do that as a backup job, plan B or whatever.
Right.
They have served in, I knew that I needed to diversify early on, that I wanted to diversify, that was a good thing for a business to do. So I learned that from doing the radio show. I didn't really know that going in. So it's like, oh, well, I've always got that in my back pocket. And then I was like, oh, diversification is good. Oh, I remember them saying that in school. Like, businesses should have diversity to be protected in case of catastrophe in one area. And then that morphed into the TV show. In the TV show, the only way I would do it is, okay, I wanted to like have a conversation on a boat while fishing. That's what I want to do. And so I got to do that, and that's a creative druther that I had. The thing with Sibella Elena, my costume designer, Women for Sheriff, that little brand is like another place that we get to create and have fun. And there's work that comes with it for sure, because, you know, it's a baby brand, and especially Sibel takes on a lot of administrative work. But I take on some too, and like how to try to stay in the place of like enjoying the creations that we are making while doing some of the like more painful parts of running a business, you know. And that is the seesaw we're trying to even out, I guess. And so I really learned it during the pandemic. And I was like, thank God I had the radio show. Right. And even though I had a TV show, we were able to film some because it was outside. So like that helped, you know, and we could put in certain protocols. And been making a movie for a long time that's finally getting wrapped up, so that's going to be cool. I know it is. So that's another thing that's been going, but I am staying home off the road for the first time in 15 years, so that's another thing that's
you just said that.
Is that scary? Are you scared,
no,
or
are
you happy? Yeah,
I'm diversified.
That's the mindset.
I'm okay.
I'm in. Yeah.
But didn't you? I
right.
just said to Aaron before this, I said she's taking the next year off of touring, and he was like, "Yeah, but she just announced a bunch of shows."
I know. Yeah, I know it. What does that tell you? I know it.
Yeah.
So I think literally I've done only like 3 shows, I think, this year so far, and for the rest of the year, including the Willie tour. This is the mindset of social media. Make it look like, woo! I think I've got 8 shows this year. I'm doing something for West Virginia Arts Council, doing something for Georgia Music Foundation that announced today. I'm doing 6 shows with Willie Nelson in October. And
not bad.
Yeah, that's it. But I'm not going out, oh, we haven't hit the Northwest in 6 months. And, you know, it's time to get back. You know, I'm not doing that grind touring. That's 100, 150 or more shows a year.
Yeah. And that break feels good.
Oh my gosh, yes, it's the best. So then I get to create in other places and focus on my health and do stuff like this and be more available to myself and to foster my work in other ways. And so it feels good.
I love hearing that, because I hear people that are earlier on in their career have a big fear of diversification or stepping back from like only writing and touring, because they feel like if they don't put 1,000% energy into that one thing, then they're going to fail and that's going to be it. And in my own experience, the more I've diversified and the more that I've started doing, it's this whole ecosystem that one thing feeds the other and inspires the other.
He's talking about me.
I actually wasn't on that one, but
I've struggled with the pandemic and then also having a child of the step back from touring as much as I used to, and being like just that fear-driven thing of like, no, if you seemingly pause or stop, then you're going to fall off and you're going to be forgotten. And, you know,
I have that too. I might feel that way in an hour, you know, for sure. Totally. But again, but then it's the F word, fear-driven. You just have to keep boldly serving what feels good to you to do and how you spend your time and efforts. And if you want to take up picture framing or carpentry or whatever, to understand that can serve your music career. And I don't know, I love that. I love artists that do a few different creative things. A lot of artists paint. Allison Moore, I just got one of her paintings. Kevin Kinney, I just got one of his paintings.
That's why I like your concept of just creative life as a whole. Everything's moving in the same direction. One vehicle might be a little faster one day than the other. One vehicle might need a little gas for a little bit, but it's a much larger thing all kind of moving together in concert.
And it should feel easy, and just trusting. That's the heart, just trust. You got to trust, because you can't control everything that's going to happen in every opportunity that is or isn't going to come your way.
Right.
I feel like if you keep putting your earnest heart out there in your creative way, in a loving way to yourself, that the good things start to come more often. And bad shit still happens too. But you can get a little bit more peace with the process. And the sooner you can get there, the better. You know, and I'm not saying I am, but I'm a lot further than I was. And it's taken a long time.
Everybody's got their own timeline. With having these multiple outlets, when the bad shit does happen, as you diversify more and more, does it feel like you have better shock absorbers for things that are going on? So if, you hit a pothole with your touring career, there's this movie happening, and if there's a halt in the movie, you have the TV show that's preparing something new. Is that a reality for you, or is that just my own imagination?
Well, sometimes, but in some ways, honestly, it's like a tree fell on my house in that weird afternoon, sunny day windstorm we had. Pierced the bedroom where we sleep. A tree, 100-year-old oak, and I watched it fall out my window and ran for my life and thought it might hit my family, So anyway, no, I have resented that happening because it has taken me away from these other parts. What it has done is forced me to create in that room again, because I have to remake the whole room now. And the energy's all changed, and we put in different floors. And the floors, when I go and look at the samples, have to give me a certain feeling and feel good when I look at them and picture them, and I'm going to think about it and compare. And so my creativity over this past few weeks, once they were done doing the major structural repairs, has been turned to recreating my sleep space. And I resent that I'm not working on music for the movie right now, or out exercising or working on my health, or creating a new meal, or spending time with my dog, or gardening, or running errands, or catching up with a friend, whatever. I resent that because it was not planned for me to put my attention there, but here we are. And I'm fortunate to be with a partner that understands that the rug matters and why it matters, and it's going to be a thing, man. And it's gone pretty smoothly, and we're happy so far. So over the weekend, it was looking at end tables for the bed. I want to go on each side, so it's got to be a certain thing, and it's got to,
That perspective, it's blowing my mind right now, that I wanted to piggyback on that, of asking, a part of your story is a lot of the loss and adversity that you've experienced in your family and your personal life, and how that one is so emotionally challenging to go through, and then also how it takes you away from a career, a creativity that really requires a lot of energy and time, and doesn't have all these safety nets of, oh, you have to go take care of yourself for a few months, we'll put you on paid leave, So having that kind of, when you have to take care of yourself, and then that shift of mindset of, okay, I'm pissed that this is taking me away from the things that I want to be focusing on, but how do I look at this creative energy that is going to be brewing from what is required of me over here right now, and really being open to where those things take you, because we all at some point in life experience major losses and health issues and things that take time and take us away from being able to sit and write songs or record a record every day.
Right, yeah.
And how to honor and respect that.
It's all art. Changing that diaper, make it art. People make frappuccinos every day and make it art, or whatever they do in the top of their coffee drinks. It's like, make it art. Why not? But if your job's to be an artist, keeping just that one little dual lane going along with the obligations of adulthood is, to me, been imperative to get into a happier place. And a lot of times what we're doing when we're doing those things and trying to make it art is just consoling ourselves and processing the bad stuff. And the more you can incorporate that exercise of consoling yourself. My neighbor is a cool artist named Kimberly Clow, and she says, making everything new according to my pleasure. So I have to go do that. I have to go down there, and I have to stand in line at that post office, and I hate that place as they ain't mopped the floor since the 70s in there, and people are pissed, and everybody's going to drive like an asshole the whole way there. How can I make it art? Maybe I'll take a back road. Maybe I'll put a weird scarf on my head. Maybe I don't know. If I can't do that, then I'm not a happy person, basically.
Yeah.
And the bigger picture is just we're all here for a finite amount of time on this rock, breathing, and we can make this experience pretty much whatever we choose to make it. And sometimes it's hard to appreciate that, for sure. But just accepting that tree fall, and I was like, son of a bitch,
Yeah, that's beautiful. We're towards the end of our time. I wanted to ask one last question before we close. One thing that stands out to me about you is how supportive you are of other women, which unfortunately still can feel like something that has to be elevated in our culture and in the music business. But my experience, you and Carlene Carter are really good friends and of different generations, and my interactions have always been, you guys are so incredibly embracing of younger generations coming up, of other women, of elevating other women. And I think that that's a really incredible thing. I remember so distinctly, I think it was JP Harris's Sunday morning come down at Americana Fest, the party. We were all playing, and you and I were behind the stage years ago. And I remember you stopped me and you said just something so simple of I see you. And it was just really encouraging of I see what you're doing. Keep going. And I think a lot about, was that something that was just innately in you? Are you conscious of it? Have you had to undo any teachings from how little girls can be brought up of there's only room for a few of us?
It's Snow White and Cinderella. If the guy don't save you, you're going to die. He better want you. You better look a certain way. I'm in competition with this other person for this. Yeah, all that, such a head fuck. I always like to lead with kindness and support with anybody that's doing this because it's hard. I'm also not going to say I'm supportive of all women. I'm not. I'm not supportive of all men. I'm supportive of people, and especially women, that I think are talented and that inspire me. So I need you around. And I see the hustle and the girls doing it for the Cinderella reasons. And then I feel like I see the girls trying to eke out their art and their heart and serve too, and that are gifted. Those women, I'll lay down on a train track for. Because, I like more good women. I like more gooder women. I like, with the chicks. And this is maybe a silly note to end on, but Sex and the City was such an important TV show because it showed women how to be friends. And the Golden Girls, showing women how to be friends. Designing Women, showing women how to be friends. Because that's not something that was all demonstrated in our fairy tales. It was all about, you better hope some best dude comes along and gets your ass. Pretty much all of them. Seeing examples of that, which is in art, those TV shows are art to me, is such a service. And I was like, oh yeah, I need my sisters in art and cause and that I just think are good, and I just feel excited by them, so I'm want them to do well.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you so much for spending your morning with us.
You guys too. Thank you. And congratulations on the human you're creating over there in your abode and on all your endeavors and your work. You're both so talented. I'm glad you're doing this and exploring, and it's very cool. This is art too, this is what y'all are doing right here. So love it. Love it, and it'll love you back, I think. I hope most of the time. Anyway.
So far so good.
Till a tree falls on your house. But
Exactly. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Other 22 Hours podcast. You can find more info on this episode, including links to things that we talked about, by going to theother22hours.com and clicking on episodes.
We want this show to be a resource for our community, from our community. So we'd love to hear from you about what works and what doesn't. Please let us know by sending an email to info@theother22hours.com. And we'll see you back here next week for another episode.